All right, so let's get going on this fuel pump. You're going to remove your negative battery terminal using a 10 millimeter. Loosen this right up, give it a wiggle, take it right off the car. We're going to hang it down here so there's no way it can connect with that negative battery terminal on the battery. Now I'm going to get under the vehicle. All right, so we're under the vehicle and you have a clear view of your fuel tank. The fuel pump is going to be located on top. Of course, it's going to be hard to get to with the body of the vehicle there. So what we're going to need to do is bring down the fuel tank. Before we do that, there's a couple things we have to disconnect. You're going to have fuel lines in the front area of it. And then when we get to the rear, you're going to notice that there's more things to disconnect back there, but I'll show you those in a minute. For these lines, what you're going to do is there's a little squeeze tab. You can usually see there's, it's almost like a little U, like this, okay? You have two little forky ends, and you have the line that comes through right here. What we need to do is push down right here, and that's going to spread the forks, and then we're going to be able to pull the line out. You could use a little bit of penetrant. That's usually helpful. All right, so you're gonna wanna make sure you're wearing safety glasses and hand protection. Gasoline is no good for your skin. Give them a little wiggle, make sure that they're broken free. And then what I like to do, I'll just use some pliers. I'll try to squeeze down on it very gently. I don't wanna break the line or anything. And of course, fuel's gonna come out. There we are. We're gonna do the same for the other line. There it is. So next we're going to take off this clamp right here. To do that, we're going to use a 7 millimeter. You can also use a flathead screwdriver. Make sure it's nice and loose. You don't need to completely undo the whole thing. That looks pretty great. We can move the hose around on the tank. So next we're going to take off this 13 millimeter bolt right here, and that's just going to make it so this can move around. We're going to try to grab onto this hose, try to wiggle it around and break it free. See if I can wedge something in there. Try to get a little squirt of penetrant. Grab the hose, just work it around. Hopefully that'll help. Just trying to help this along. There we go. Got that off of there. Just gonna have this to hold it. That feels pretty great. All right, so our fuel tank mounting plate right here has some mounting bolts that go up into the body of the vehicle. You have 1, 2. If you come over here, you get another one up there. I like to take out these 2 nuts right here because that's gonna make it so this piece can come off and it's gonna get out of the way. And then on the other side of the tank, you're gonna notice there's 2 other mounting bolts that hold it up as well. So let's start taking these down. You're gonna use your 15 millimeter. I like to use a swivel. Get this out of here. We're gonna remove these. Move over to the other side. All right, so we've got one right here. One right up here. See if we can get this one. So that's all of our bolts. They all look the same, with the exception of those 2 nuts. So now you want to make sure that you get this little piton that's holding this cable off of this. You don't want to give this a tug and potentially break any wires. So whatever you got to do to get it off. There we go. That's going to give us plenty of slack. Now we're going to lower the gas tank a little bit. Okay, I got this down a little bit. Now we just want to try to take a peek up along the top and around the front and sides and just make sure that nothing's still connected. That's super important. Last thing you want is something still connected. Maybe you forgot to take down this line. Look at how much it would be stretching and potentially breaking. This looks great. We're coming along. Looks good over here. Along the back side, we definitely got all that. This is looking great. So I'm just gonna get a strap. I'm gonna put a strap over this to hold the tank for me, and then we'll continue going down a little bit to the point we can disconnect the electrical for the fuel pump. All right, so that's on there nice and good. Let's lower this down a little bit some more. Nice and easy. We're paying special attention to anything that might give a tug. Okay, this looks like it's getting pretty close. Now I'm going to try to get up top, and I'm going to see if I can disconnect the electrical real quick. All right, so with the mirror, you can see exactly where the electrical connector is up top there. Okay, so now we have a clear view of the connector. We're using our mirror. As you can tell, there's a little lock, and that's on the connector closest to the fuel pump. That's going to need to slide out towards the driver's side. Once you slide that to the point that it can't slide any further towards the driver's side, you're going to squeeze the tab, and that's that center square area that's closest to the wires. Once you squeeze that, give it a little tug, and it should want to slide right out. All right, so I'm going to use a little bit of penetrant. I'm just going to try to spray it on there. And just see if I can get that lock area. That's just going to help it come off easier once we do that. You can use a pick or a small screwdriver. Of course, I'm kind of trying to use a mirror to do this right now, so getting this off isn't going to be the easiest. What needs to happen is this red thing needs to slide over. I'm gonna bring it down more. So now that I have this unlocked, I'm gonna push on this tab right here. And I'm just gonna try to pull this off, just like that. Pull the wires out from under there. Just double check, make sure there's nothing else connected on the top of this tank, and there isn't. Perfect. We're clear to bring this right down. So here we go, nice and slow. So when you look along the top here, you're going to notice that it's full of sand and crud. You want to get all that out of there. To do that, you can use some compressed air or a vacuum cleaner. For me, compressed air works the best. It'll get all the crud out of here, and then I'm going to show you another thing that you can use the compressed air for. Safety glasses on, here we go. So as you can tell, this looks much better at this point. You don't have to worry about having any of that dirt potentially falling into your fuel tank. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little bit of penetrant. Go along all these little ears right here. Those are the locking ears. And then along the plastic. And then, of course, this little connector right there, because why not? Watching for a little bit of blowback. We're just going to add a little bit of air. And in my experience, what that does is it forces the penetrant a little bit deeper down into all those little crevices, and it's going to help us get this lock ring off. All right, so we're going to take off this line off the top of the fuel pump. Same way you took off all those other lines. You just press this little tab and then give it a tug. Press. Tug. Very nice. This large metal ring right here is your lock ring, and that's what's holding the pump down inside the fuel tank. To remove that, you need to turn it counterclockwise. Should want to spin. There we are. So now that that broke free, you just lift that straight up. Obviously, you're going to need to get it off around the pump there. This comes right up. This is going to be full of fuel, so you want to be very careful not to spill any of it on your skin. See all the fuel in there? I'm just going to try to tip it, see if I can get as much back into the fuel tank as I can. Wonderful. So we're just going to take off this rubber gasket right here. Pull that right out of there because we've got a brand new one. Okay, so we have our original fuel pump here. We have the outlet where the fuel's getting pumped out of. You have your electrical connector, you've got your little level here, right? And then down in there, of course, is where the pump and all that good stuff is. But we're not too worried about that because that's not what we're dealing with. Right here, we have our brand new quality TRQ assembly. It's the same thing. Very nice. We'll just pull this elastic band off of here. It's going to go right on there. Give it a look. Should slide right in. And clip in right there. You'll hear it. It's audible. You're going to take this off of here. A couple good twists on there. They want to make sure that wasn't going to fall off on you. Perfect. So this tells the car what level your fuel tank's at. Very important. You need to make sure that you have that in and clipped in. It also comes with a brand new gasket, which is also very important. Last thing you want to do is reuse an old gasket. First of all, because a lot of times they have crunchies on them. Other times, if you give them a stretch, whoa, they get dry and brittle, and they just come right apart. That would not make a great seal. Obviously, you're going to have dirt, moisture, fuel fumes coming all over the place, a check engine light. Just use your brand new gasket. All right, let's get ready for an install. So now we're going to clean out this area right along where that gasket's going to ride. We want to try to get out as much of that gasoline and crud that's in there as possible. Last thing you want to leave is any dirt in there, because that's going to leave an area for moisture to get in and vapor to get out. So just use a rag or a screwdriver, whatever you've got. Clean out as much of it as possible, trying to keep as little of it out of the tank as you can. All right, that looks pretty great. Now what we'll do is we'll grab our brand new gasket, we'll line that up on there, and then we'll grab our brand new pump and slide it in. Should sit right in the channel there. We'll make sure it's completely aligned once we get the pump. So here we go. Start with putting that level sensor in. Now's the time where you want to check that gasket, make sure it's sitting perfectly along the whole way around. Beautiful. Take your lock plate. This part might be a little hard. Need to make sure that gasket's still good. Perfect. All right, so I have the locking plate started. Now you want to pay special attention to where the lock is supposed to sit. When you look at the locking plate, you're going to see that there's these little raised areas that are along the slots, all right? And they're on all the slots. You want to make sure that those raised areas are sitting in the raised areas on the locking tabs that are part of the fuel tank. Looks like it's getting close. So that looks perfect. You have your locking tabs that are on the lock ring, right inside the center groove on the little pitons that are coming up from the fuel tank. Check them all the way around. It looks great. I don't see any green of my gasket showing anywhere around. I'd say we're looking pretty good. Let's get this connected. Wonderful. We'll just blow this back off in a second, make sure it's as clean as possible, and we can continue with the install. Let's just blow off some of this crud here. Okay, so let's get this gas tank up in here. All right, so we have our electrical connector. It's important to remember that once you push this back into the fuel pump, you press this little tab and lock it down. Otherwise, something can happen. This could get pushed, and this could come disconnected, and you're going to have a major issue. Push it all the way so you hear a click. Give it a tug. Find that lock. Squeeze that all the way in. That feels great. Okay, so you've got your little clippy-doo here. That's just going to go right onto this. Just see if I can get it with one hand here. That feels great. Let's get these lines. Try to connect them in. Give them a tug. As soon as you press them in, you hear a click, give it a tug. Make sure it does not come back out. Same thing with this one. Click, tug, perfect. All right, so let's start getting the rear lines connected. Got the big one that has the Y on it. Make sure that it clicks in and it stays. That's gonna be super important. That feels great. Got this one. Yep. Give them a tug. Double, triple, quadruple check. Feels great. This one. Yeah. We're gonna tighten this up now so we do not forget. Whenever I'm tightening these clamps, I prefer to use a socket over the flathead. You can just get better grip and make sure that they're nice and snug. Oh yeah. So now we're gonna put in the bolt that holds these secure. So it's lined up. Tight. Let's get our strap off of here. So let's start putting in these bolts using our 15. If you need to move the tank around. Let's make sure you connect this clip. All right, so just to be sure, you have both these front lines on. They're definitely clicked in. Move along here. You definitely have this wiring harness secured. Come along to the rear. Everything that we took off back here, you have your clamp tight. You have both those lines that we removed nice and snug. They are not coming apart. That looks great. So we're going to reconnect our negative battery terminal. Just bring it right over. Put it on there. Give your terminal a wiggle. Make sure it's nice and secure. So what I usually like to do is I like to put the key in. I'll turn it to the on position. Let it sit for a second. That runs the fuel pump. Turn it back off. Turn it back on again. Let it sit for a second. It's running the fuel pump. It's filling the lines with fuel again. And then here we go. Perfect. No check engine light. Looks great. All right. Let's check, see if we have any fuel leaking. I see nothing dripping, no puddles on the ground. This looks great. Let's let it run for a little while and just double check, make sure there's no puddles of fuel. Okay, we ran it for a little while. I don't see any puddles under there. I think we did a great job.